You ever look at a country today and just think, how on earth did they get here? Well, we're going to dig into that. We're going to look at a single transformative decade in Turkey that absolutely reshaped its future, and you can still feel the aftershocks today. So, let's dive in. It's a huge question, right? But for Turkey, the 1980s, well, they weren't just another 10 years. They were a crucible. A period of such intense and honestly contradictory change that its shockwaves are still shaping the country right now. We're going to break down exactly how that all went down. And look, this isn't just some dusty, abstract history lesson. This very question, how did we get here, was actually the title of a recent art exhibition in Istanbul. It just goes to show you how much people in Turkey are still grappling with the legacy of the 80s. And that's really what sparked this whole explainer. So where does our story even begin? It all kicks off in the year 1980, with two absolutely seismic events that happened just months apart. One was this radical economic shock, and the other, a complete political takeover. Okay, so before we go any further, there's this one key term we've got to get our heads around: neoliberalism. The easiest way to think of it is like a complete rewiring of a country's economic DNA. It's all about opening up markets, pushing exports, and really scaling back the government's role in everything. This was the brand new philosophy about to hit Turkey. And the timing here is absolutely critical. In January, the government announces this massive economic pivot. But just 8 months later, bam, the military takes over in a coup, basically silencing anyone who might push back against these huge changes. It was a classic 1-2 punch. First, the economic shock, then the political force to make sure it sticks. So this brings us to the central tension of the entire decade. You've got this massive, gaping chasm between what the new government was promising its people and, well, what was actually happening on the ground. Now, 1982 is a year you really need to remember. A new constitution gets introduced and passed. Now, on the surface, it looks like a return to civilian government. But in reality, it basically cemented the military's power, giving them the final say over any government that came after. And under this new constitution, a new party, the Motherland Party, or ANAP, comes to power. And their message? It was incredibly seductive. They said, hey, embrace this new economic model, and you're going to get prosperity, you're going to get liberation, you'll get to join this modern consumer society. It was a really powerful promise. But here's the paradox at the heart of the whole decade. While the government is talking up prosperity and freedom, the reality was just completely different. You had an authoritarian regime cracking down on any and all opposition. Trade unions, political parties outlawed. State violence was peaking. The key thing to get here is that the economic opening up was only really possible because of a political shutting down. But you know what? People are resilient. When the official ways to express yourself politically are shut down, people find new ways. And this is where our story takes another fascinating turn: the emergence of a powerful new civil society, built literally from the ground up. This concept right here is everything, because that 1982 Constitution banned all the traditional ways of doing politics. Unions, parties, people had to get creative. They started carving out these alternative public spheres, new spaces, totally outside of government control, where they could connect, organize, and start demanding change. And just look at the sheer variety of these new groups. This wasn't some single unified opposition. No, it was this whole ecosystem of new social movements popping up. Feminists, environmentalists, activists for animal rights and gay rights, human rights defenders. All these different groups started building new kinds of solidarity, and in doing so, they paved the way for the social organizations that are such a big part of Turkish society today. Okay, so let's put it all together. Let's connect the dots. We've seen the economic shock, the political crackdown, and the social reaction. So how do all these pieces fit together to explain the Turkey we see today? So here's the chain of events, plain and simple. First, you get the economic shock of neoliberalism. Second, you get the political reset from the military coup. And third, the social reaction, the birth of all these new civil society movements. It's these three forces all mixed together that created the complex, dynamic, and often contentious landscape of modern Turkey. So if you take away just one thing from all of this, let it be this: the 1980s didn't just leave one legacy, it left two, totally intertwined. On one hand, it forged the free market, consumption-driven economy we see now. But on the other, By squashing traditional politics, it accidentally gave birth to this incredibly vibrant, diverse, and unbelievably resilient civil society that is still a major force to be reckoned with. And that brings us to a final thought. You know, the 1980s in Turkey probably felt pretty normal to a lot of people living through it day to day, but it completely redefined their future. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What's happening right now, in our own time, that future historians and artists are going to look back on and ask, so, how did we get here?